Welcome to the Area Podcast from the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Jill Klindt, Chief Financial Officer at Workiva. Serving over 6,000 companies with their financial reporting and data compliance needs, Workiva is one of Iowa's most notable startup success stories. This episode is presented by Flynn Wright, Iowa's premier full-service advertising agency, serving clients from coast to coast for over 40 years. Experts in crafting stories that sell, Flynn Wright prides itself on helping brands drive performance and stay one step ahead. Jill Klindt, Chief Financial Officer of Workiva, thank you for being on this episode of the Area Podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well,
it's a pleasure.
I appreciate you instantly saying yes and just agreeing to come on because, Workiva is one of those incredible success stories from Ames that we're going to get to. And out of anyone that I could ask, you probably know that story better than anyone.
Better than most, I would say. There's a few others that have been there as long as I have, but it's a story. We were talking ahead of this. I love to tell the story, and certainly it's a fun one for the city of Ames and for the county and for the state. And it's a good success story. Yeah.
Well, we do have a lot to get to, but maybe we should just set a baseline and just kind of give some bullet points and sort of the elevator pitch on what is Workiva. What are you doing on that beautiful campus that you have on the Research Park? What are you doing every day there?
Well, we do a lot, Eric, and it's even more than just in Ames because we're a global company. We've got offices around the world, employees around the world. We're operating in Europe and APAC and Latin America, as well as, of course, U.S. and Canada. And what we're doing is we're selling regulatory compliance software, which sounds just amazing, doesn't it? But we are an enormous help to our customers. We help them with all of their most sensitive data, and we help them to pull all that information together into our platform. And we are a SaaS platform that was born in the cloud, which is something that not every company can say, every software company. A lot of software companies were originally on-prem and then had to move into the cloud, which is a whole ordeal, but we were born in the cloud. And so we were very early in that. And we talked our early customers into trusting us with this very sensitive pre-release financial information. A brand new company based in Ames, Iowa, and we've helped them ever since. We've have over 80% of the Fortune 500 are our customers. And we help them not only with their regulatory reporting, say SEC reporting or banking or insurance reporting requirements that they have, but we also help them to manage their risk and compliance environment, put in place controls so that they can rely on that data, and work with their auditors in order to create audit programs and controls around it. And then more recently, we've also been helping our customers with sustainability information. So we have a carbon accounting within our platform, and they can do the calculations around their carbon emissions and use that and report that information, whether it's in their ESG or sustainability reporting. Whether that's a regulatory reporting, certain countries are moving towards requiring carbon data also be reported alongside of their financial information. And so that's another thing that we've moved towards is this integrated report. So a report of not only financial information, but also non-financial or sustainability information, and helping them ensure that all the data that they're reporting is correct and repeatable and in compliance, and it's a beautiful thing.
So there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. Is some of that stuff fairly new, like the carbon part of it? Is that newer to the services that you provide?
So it's newer to us, okay. Absolutely. We've only in the past few years started to do sustainability reporting or the integrated report. For carbon accounting, we purchased a company last summer, Sustain.life is the name of the company. They were based on the East Coast. And they were a carbon accounting platform, and we quickly integrated them into our platform and started to sell that solution to our customers as well, alongside of all of our other solutions. So carbon accounting is definitely very new to us, not even a year old, But we're really excited for the way that it allows us to engage further with our customers in another aspect of their business.
So let's go back a little bit. For you, I mean, you're an Iowa State alum.
I am.
Here in Ames, and you worked for a number of different companies, and you can expand upon this, but Wells Fargo Financial,
I did.
Principal Mortgage. So you did that stuff. But then in 2008, then known as Web Filings, kicked off, and it was this small startup of what now is Workiva. And I always, I've read this about you. You were a week one employee. So talk about that transition for you from, working in these larger organizations. And now Workiva is one of those large organizations. But when you were that week one employee, you had to move from a large organization into this startup. How do you make that decision?
So it was actually easier than you're making it sound, Eric, and I'll tell you why. So I'm an alum of Iowa State. When I was at Iowa State, I actually also worked at Engineering Animation, which was another software company in the research park in the past, and it went through a couple of different hands. Now is owned by Siemens, so that company and some of those people still exist in the research park and are doing the similar work. But I was an intern at Engineering Animation, and then went full-time when I graduated from college and was an accountant with Engineering Animation. And many that have been around Ames for years might recognize and know that many of the executives at EAI, at Engineering Animation, also were founders at Web Filings. And so the way that it came about was that I was working for the former CFO of Engineering Animation in a consulting firm that he had before the startup of Web Filings. And as that startup happened, I moved into that project. So it was just the next thing that I took on, which was I was well suited as far as the location. Me and alongside of some of my other coworkers, Angie Quaker and many others that were in Ames, we rolled on to Web Filings in a very early stage, not only helping with certainly where I could with my background in finance and accounting, but also as a subject matter expert on financial reporting. So having been exposed to and seen some of this reporting in the past, helped with some of the early customers, the beta customers, as the software was being developed, and helped to all of us were able to help in many ways and direct how the software and how the platform was written and how it was built, because a developer might not know what a financial person, somebody that's doing these reports might be looking for in a solution. And so it was a really nice bridge between the developers and some of the SMEs. And then, so that's how I ended up day one, because I was working for one of the founders for Web Filings.
So you hear those glamorous stories of these software company startups. They're starting in a garage, with Apple and Microsoft. I mean, was that the way it was with Workiva? Like, how many week one employees were there?
There was just a couple handfuls. It was all the founders, and then just a few employees alongside of that were developers and subject matter experts. All were connected in some way, already working for the founders in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And so it was not terribly glamorous, but we pretty quickly got a space in the research park in Building 2. And from there, just continued to expand. Everything went really well. We were able to fund the company in the early stages, and it was done very differently than a lot of the companies that you would see on the West Coast in a lot of ways. And I think that being in the Midwest actually lent itself to that. So it was just a very interesting experience, and one that you wouldn't see in a lot of maybe West Coast, East Coast built software companies.
Yeah. That snowball effect of momentum, really does happen, but making that first snowball oftentimes is the hardest thing. So this software company from Ames, Iowa, and then how hard was it to get, these companies and businesses, and I appreciate that you dropped the fact that you now work with 80% of the Fortune 500 companies and assist them with their reporting. But it had to start with, that one or two. Were those tough conversations, or were those companies, were they ready to pivot and try something new?
So it was very much relationship driven. It was the relationships that our founders had with certain executives at different companies, and also on our board. Our external board had some just phenomenal relationships, either companies that they were former leadership for or had just built relationships. And it was an Iowa connection. Generally, most of our early beta customers were in Des Moines.
Oh.
And so being able to build on those relationships with these public companies that were based in Des Moines, we could be hands-on. We could just go down there and talk to them. We could walk them through what we were building and ask them questions, ask for feedback. And it was very easy to do because we were all right here in Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously, the platform has to stand on its own. Relationships can certainly bridge gaps, but the product has to be there and has to make sense for them, and quite honestly, has to make their life easier.
Absolutely, it does. And we had a phenomenal development team, and the developers that were building the platform alongside of our beta customers and alongside of all the SMEs and the feedback that we were getting, just did a really great job listening and understanding what was needed, and then building from scratch what was needed. And there's some early stories there too, because David Hala is our Chief Technology Officer today, and he was there in the very early days as well, building. And so we've got a lot of history in the executive team at Workiva, who understood that we were doing something different. And to your point, that snowball was building, and it's been, it's really nice to see how we've been able to continue that even into current day.
So how did the company, from those beginnings, and I'm kind of glancing over the middle parts of it because my entry point to this conversation is obviously where Workiva is at today.
Sure.
But you see so many companies from that startup, they scale and then they plateau. And it just feels like Workiva continues to go up, and maybe you did have those plateau moments. But how do you cut through them? As a leadership team, as a company, you referenced others who were there also on day one. I mean, you were all there and needed to scale this in a certain way, but then keep going. How do you cut through that?
So I think that it really had a lot to do with the experience that our founders had. And you think about somebody like Marty Vanderplow, who only more recently stepped away from his CEO job as the head of the company, but still is the chair of our board. And you think about his experience and what he was building. He was always one that would always be looking for the next thing. And we continue to do that today. So we take and learn from what we've done in the past. You have to, as a software company, you have to continue to build your TAM. You can't just harvest from your existing customers. If you're not building something new, then you're not growing. And so it's really important to always find the next thing. And for us, we started out in SEC, built the business and built the base of the funding for everything else that we've done from that SEC reporting business, and then moved into controls. So audit, risk controls, SOX. For those that aren't aware, SOX is the control audit requirement for the SEC has for public companies. And then moving into sustainability reporting, carbon accounting. And even today, we're looking for what's that next thing? What's the next thing that will expand our addressable market? And without that, you can't grow. And you see that happen with other software companies. And it's a part of our nature that we're always looking for what's the next way that we grow.
So back in 2014, you were there, but Workiva turned into a publicly traded company.
We did.
Talk about that decision making. Is that easy?
No.
I mean,
No.
Is there a lot of stress in that decision making to do that?
Yes, I would say that there was a lot of stress, and the executive team at the time, I know, really was planning for, that is the next way that you fund a company. Because the reason that companies go public is because they're trying to fund their company. They're trying to fund future growth. They're funding their operations and trying to build something to bring value to their shareholders, whether it's a public or a private shareholder. Yeah. And we had gotten to the point where we knew that additional funding was needed. And you could go to private funding, which had built the company to date. What's very different about us is we never had venture capital funding. So it was a very, the founders controlled their destiny because they were working with friends and families, smaller investors, and weren't going to those larger venture capital funds where sometimes they have somebody on the board. So in order to control their own destiny, they decided to go public so that they could get the funding from the public markets. It does bring a whole separate set of concerns.
I was going to ask.
But it did allow them to grow the company the way that they wanted to still, retaining control over the strategy and retaining control over what those next stages look like. So I think that it was not an easy decision, and it did have a lot of work that came along with it, but it was, I think, the right decision at the time.
Having everything on much more on public display, does that impact decision making or the company culture and stuff like that?
I don't know if it impacted the culture as much, but it absolutely it impacts your decision making because as a private company, you get a lot more grace, potentially, is the way to state it, in how you grow. You don't have to as quickly report, we're investing for whatever we're investing for, and potentially the public markets don't like it. But you're focused on here and they're focused on here sometimes. So it's the long-term gains and the long-term growth and value that you're providing to those shareholders. And if you don't have long-term shareholders, then you might not get, as the same kind of engagement. So I mean, I think that it is a lot harder because you do have to report out every quarter, every year. You're providing more information. You're having a lot of conversations with your investors, and they have a lot of different goals than potentially you do, and they have a lot of opinions, which we love to hear because it does help to inform us as to how we're operating and additional information that maybe we need to provide. But it's a very different way to run a company when you're public. Yes.
This episode of the Area Podcast is sponsored by...
You have a story to tell. That story has a job to do. To be seen. To be heard. To sell. To find inspiration and insight. To use persuasion to change behavior. To turn strategy into tactics, tactics into action. To sell. Nobody does that better than Flynn Wright.
Continental Manufacturing Chemists, located in Huxley, Iowa, is a leading producer of oral care and animal care products for major brands across the United States. Since 1961, they have been a manufacturer of toothpaste, mouthwash, along with shampoos, conditioners, and many other products. As their company continues to expand, they are seeking passionate individuals to join their team, and they are hiring across all shifts. What truly sets Continental Manufacturing Chemists apart goes beyond their advanced equipment and diverse product lines. The heart of the organization lies in its commitment to its team members. In an era where many organizations face challenges in recruiting and retaining talent, CMC has managed to grow significantly because they put company culture first. You can learn more about Continental Manufacturing Chemists and apply online through their website.
It all started with the mulch colorant that made our name. And now, Color Biotics manufactures millions of pounds of product month after month, bringing brilliance and resilience all around the world. And as we look ahead, all we see is growth. A growing customer base, And growing sales mean a growing team. From the lab to the field, backyards to ball fields, and beyond. We need vivid imagination, intense passion, and brilliant ideas. If that sounds like you, we have one question. Are you ready to get to work? Colorbiotics.com/careers.
So I remember just last May, May of 2024, so that was the 10-year anniversary of going public, and I saw the picture of a large team being at the New York Stock Exchange, being able to ring in the new bell. I mean, that's a pretty cool experience to be part of. Just as a company, it's kind of this decades worth of being a publicly traded company and kind of maybe having this feeling of, okay, we've arrived, we've done it. It doesn't mean the work goes away, and certainly you're looking at whatever the next thing is, but it had to have been a cool moment.
Absolutely, yes. That was, it was so much fun. To be there at the stock exchange, which is just a really fun and interesting experience as it is, because it's something that not very many people get to see, to experience, to do. And to get to celebrate everything that had been done to get us to that point was just, it was a lot of fun. And I think everybody that was, we brought a lot of our longest term employees with us to New York. So those that have been with the company for more than 10 years, more than 12 years, more than 30, so very long-term employees got the chance to come out and celebrate that with us in New York. And so it was just so much fun. And I think that it also was a time to reflect on what we had done.
Yeah.
And just, we're a public company, 10-year public company in Ames, Iowa, and how did we get here? And it goes by in the blink of an eye, it feels like. So
you need those moments though. I mean, to be able to reflect and look back, because everything can just be you blink and here you are 10 years later, and there's so much work that goes into it. So I hope you and the team did take that opportunity to be like, this is cool. Like, this is really neat.
Oh, definitely. There was lots of that.
Oh, good.
And a lot of, do you remember when we were in this little tiny room in Building 2 in the research park?
Yeah.
And when we were having to walk across the street in a blizzard to attend meetings in different buildings before we got the new, before we had our new campus built. So, yeah.
So, once again, Workiva is on the Fortune magazine's 100 Best Companies to Work For now, 7th year in a row.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
The neat thing, and you just referenced it, and we had talked about it already, where it starts with this core group, but now it's 2,600 employees across 19 offices. You're working across multiple countries, and that type of scale. Like, how do you maintain the culture in a positive way that, one, you can be on this list, but ultimately, so that you can retain talent and continue to grow and scale your company? I'm guessing it's a lot of like Zoom meetings and stuff still.
Yeah, well, absolutely, because we're all over the world.
Yeah.
So you're working with people that are definitely not here. And we're a company where we work where you work best. So even prior to the pandemic, we had the majority of our employees were remote because they were sales employees, marketing employees. We needed them in certain areas of the country or the certain areas of the world. We maybe didn't have an office there. And so we were already working through how do we make sure that we stay engaged as in a virtual environment. And I think that's why we transitioned pretty quickly through COVID to fully virtual for a period of time. And as we've returned, some employees have enjoyed that additional flexibility and remained mostly virtual. And some will do more of a hybrid, sometimes in the office, sometimes working from home. And some go into our offices every day. It's just whatever somebody prefers. But we do take a lot of care with the culture to bring people together for meaningful meetings, meaningful topics, to bring them in person to do that. And I think that living our values is really important for Workiva. We want to be a company who is inclusive to all, and it means a lot to us. And so we take a lot of care with our employees to make sure that they feel welcome. And being on that list, I mean, this is our employees that put us on that list. And it's not every company that gets onto that Fortune list of best companies. And so we listen to the feedback from our employees, and we make changes based on that feedback. And we take a lot of care with the relationship that they have with our employees in order to make sure that they have a good working environment and that they have a place where they can build a career and help us to build a successful company. And that's what it's all about. When you're working, you hope that you work someplace where you enjoy your job, you enjoy your team, you enjoy the things that you're doing, and that's what we want to provide.
So clearly, I think we can say that it's worked for Workiva. Starting here in Ames, your office out of Ames, the headquarters are here in Ames, continue to be at the research park. Mm-hmm. What type of pitch would you make that starting a technology company, a software company here in Iowa, here in central Iowa, why did it work for Workiva, and why could it work for another company rather than California and Silicon Valley, which is, when you think of technology companies, that's what, people that's what they think of first. Pitch Iowa.
Pitch Iowa. Okay. So I think that the pitch for doing it in Iowa is that we're Midwesterners, and so it tends to be an easier place to do business. There's a lot of really nice people here, and they want to help. And so when we were starting our business, the state of Iowa, the city of Ames, the research park, Iowa State, we had a lot of help. And I even mentioned our early customers in Des Moines, a lot of help, so much feedback from those early customers on how to make our platform better. And you without all of those things working together, it wouldn't have gotten done. So I think for any company that's starting up, there's all kinds of resources through the university, through the research park, through your individual cities, through the state, that help support and enable companies to be successful. And it's a lot more economical to do it here because the cost of living is lower. And so I think that there's all these things that can help to ensure that you make your dollars go further. Whereas if you're in Silicon Valley, on the West Coast, it might just cost you more to build the same company. And so thinking about trying to be really efficient with those early investment dollars, this is where you do that. Oh. And you have Iowa State with phenomenal developers being spun out of there and graduating out of that college every single day. And those that have stayed local, that are here and continuing to develop their skills and craft and looking for new things to do, potentially. None of ours, right? We want to keep ours.
I get it.
But I think that you just have a lot of resources here coming out of the university. The city is really supportive of business. You have just the environment in general being what it is. Yeah. I think lends itself well to being a place where you can start a company and grow within the state, within the city. And I think that it's not as easy in some other areas of the country as it is here.
Have you seen a shift where, so from the humble beginnings of the web filings and to today, there's a lot of time in between there. Has that philosophy shifted where you can start a company like this virtually anywhere, whereas maybe before it was much less heard of to be able to start that type of company in Iowa? And clearly Workiva did it, but has that shifted where you don't have to be geographically a certain part of the country to start a certain kind of business?
I think that it has shifted because of the way that work has shifted. And I think that it was already changing even when COVID came through. But I think that accelerated some of that, some of the functionality, some of the softwares that are available, allowing you to work better together. And it just made it more accepted.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I don't know if everybody, is saying, well, I work from home. That's kind of an odd thing that before COVID,
Right.
that would have been unusual. But I do think that now it is more open to starting a company more wherever and having access to resources around the world, whereas you maybe wouldn't have had that in the past. So I think that starting a software company in Silicon Valley, there still are a lot of really great people that have skill sets that have that have done this with multiple companies there, but it's not to say that you can't pull in those skills virtually into your company here. And I think it does make it easier to do that because generally everybody is more used to being able to use resources no matter where they're at. They can pull in a virtual meeting. You can do just a partial usage of time. There's a lot of different ways that you can access resources.
So earlier this year, Workiva had the opportunity to have a presence at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos.
We did.
When I started seeing this, I just kept thinking, I was like, how do you sort of casually drop that into, conversation? Oh, I was just in Davos this weekend. No big deal.
It doesn't drop as casual, even though I'm a pretty casual person, and I've tried it a few times, and I always get a look like that's not casual. Yeah. So when I was in Davos, you can't do it.
Okay. All right. Did you try?
Yes. Oh, I tried, but no, it can't be done. It just can't be done. But that was a really interesting experience, and we've done this in a few different places. So the whole reason that we were there is because we want to be where our customers are, where our partners are, and where these decision makers are. And at that conference, you can really quickly get access to and have meetings with whole groups of people within those groups, within your customers, within your partners, within your investors, where it would take you months to do it otherwise because everybody's right there.
Yeah.
And so this was our first year that we were in Davos, and we were just engaged, trying to see where does it make sense for us to engage. Yeah. And we had a really good first experience there. We're able to have over 50 meetings between the three of us that were there. So I was there. Our CEO, Jill was there. And then our Chief Sustainability Officer, Mandy McReynolds, was there as well. Mandy's based in Ankeny, actually. She's based out of Iowa, too. So. But between the three of us, we had all these engagements, whether it was dinners, whether we were sitting on panels, whether we were attending meetings, dinners, all these things. But we've been doing this in a few different places to, again, be where our customers are, where our partners are. We've done it with Climate Week in New York as well. With COP is another one. We're at COP in Dubai a couple years ago. In Azerbaijan this last fall. Okay. And then we'll be there again in Brazil this fall. So we're trying to just engage. It's a way for us to market and figure out where can we get the best engagement with those groups to help them see who we are, what we can help them with, and build a better product too, because then we can also get feedback and listen to these experts and thought leaders about these topics that are directly related to the solutions that we're providing, and make ourselves better and better able to serve their needs.
So one of the things that one of the takeaways that I saw, just following it remotely through social media, is how AI is transforming finance. And I saw that you were a part of some panels, and then there were some written pieces that came out of that where you are quoted and referenced into all of that. AI is one of those things that, we're all aware that it exists, and yet you're living with it now every day. And so how, as a company, do you stay on the forefront of this? And then how do you personally stay on the forefront of this? Everyone, they hear of AI, and maybe throw some things into Chat GPT from time to time. But you're having to manufacture and harness this power for Workiva. That feels daunting to me.
It is actually, because it is an area that is just growing and changing so quickly right now that you could start to build something today. You make a decision, this is what we're going to do. In 3 months, that might just be old news. You might have already outlived the usefulness of what your original thought was. So you have to stay, like you mentioned, directly in front of technology, in front of trends. But what it does is AI will allow companies to do work more quickly. It allows them to have their employees pick up and do only the work that humans need to do. So you can take out some of the more manual tasks that can be automated, or however you're going to just ease that work. Taking large data sets and making them manageable. And it leaves your employees to be able to focus on the higher level work that is more engaging, that makes them happier, that helps you to grow your company faster. And I think that what we're going to find is that all companies are going to move towards this. It'll just become ubiquitous. It'll just be the thing. Everybody does it. And it'll take some time, especially for those that aren't directly trained on it, or those that aren't directly using it every day. But it really will help companies to function more efficiently and be more effective as well in what they're doing, because you're relying on some of these AI technologies to do this work, and less on the manual aspects of it. But I think what it does over time is, you're exactly right. Like you have to stay in front of it. You have to really actively train. You have to actively learn. You have to stay engaged and curious, because otherwise it's just changing so fast.
Well, that's an interesting philosophy. Do you have active conversations about this, like in your office? I just appreciated the words that you used, and around AI. It's not AI is going to do all of this stuff for us, and we don't have to think about it anymore. We really have to think about it a lot to be able to make it work the way we want it to work.
Mm-hmm. So within our platform, we want to build AI functionality into our platform in ways that is valuable to our customers. Anytime we're building any functionality, it should be of value to our customers, or else why are we doing it? And you can always just shore up existing things, but can we use AI to improve the way that they work through workflows? Can we use AI to help them build different documents and get a starting point? Can we use AI? We use it throughout my teams, and we'll continue to accelerate the usage of it to review, for manual reviews of invoices, for expense reports, for those sorts of things. Those are the things we're moving towards. And again, taking out some amount of manual work, and it reduces the amount that you have to spend to do that work. And so it helps you be more profitable as a company, and it helps you then use those dollars for growth, instead of more manual tasks that really wasn't working towards or providing for your growth. And so we want to do that for our customers too. It needs to be a value, and we're continuing to work with them on what are those things.
Did you see this coming years ago?
There have been early stages of it. We've done you think about like robotic process automation, you might have heard about these sorts of things, but and other automations. And I think all of that has built into a lot of ways, like AI.
Yeah.
So if you think about, it's always been more towards, okay, we need to have machines or computers do some of the thinking for us, because otherwise it's just a waste of a person's time. And so I think that we have been moving towards it over the years. But you think about like agentic AI, where it's acting as a person. You can have it sometimes when you call a call center. It's not a person, but sometimes you can't tell that it's not a person. And it's because it's taking you through some early stages to gather information and doing what it can to help you potentially without having to have a person tap in. But then maybe you get to a point where, so I mean, it's those sorts of things that have become almost, you almost can't tell when you're interacting with one. Same when you're doing like a chat on a page. So if you're on a web page and you're chatting with them to ask a question, it's probably not a real person. That's probably AI that you're chatting with, and they'll answer as many questions as you can. So like those sorts of things will continue to grow and grow until there's one company more recently that I've seen that says before you hire another person, you have to prove why AI can't do that job. That's not us. But like these are the types of things that might start to come about.
That feels like a very jarring shift in thinking, although that is the reality probably of the future of some companies.
Mm-hmm. I think so, especially depending on the company. And like the way I think of it, so I've been asked before, well, does that mean that you get rid of all the people? I'm like, no, that's not the point. The point is that you get to upgrade your people to do the higher level thinking work. And if you can't, sometimes it's very hard to staff, to find people. It potentially reduces the amount of staffing and hiring that you have to do because you can instead fill in some of that work with AI and with the computer. And so sometimes it's really needed because you just can't always find the people that you need or want.
Yeah. Does it make when you think about innovation from a company's standpoint, does it make the future foggier with AI because it's ever evolving and changing and it's hard to see like where the turns in the road are going to be?
I think it can, yes, because if 5 years ago, I don't know if there would have been very few people, I think, that would have been able to say this is exactly where we're going to be in 2025.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there's more opportunity for growing new ideas. And to your point, I do think it makes it foggier because there's too many possible paths now because you can use this technology to help you get there, and it'll ebb and flow depending on the needs, and so it could be a lot of different answers.
So what's the next exciting thing for Workiva, and maybe from the list of things that you could maybe share? I don't even know what you can't share. So
yeah, so exciting things for Workiva is that we are a company that is focused on growth, and we're going to continue to look for ways to grow the company. And we're focused on growth, geographic growth. So we're growing in Europe, in Latin America, APAC, as well as in the U.S. and Canada. And we're going to continue to build out the best platform that we can. We're going to continue to focus on all of our solutions and trying to think of how can we continue to provide new solutions to our customers, and focus on our partners and how can we work with our partners to help them grow their businesses and our business alongside of each other. So those have always been our growth pillars of growth.
How is it understanding and learning international finance?
So
and you just referenced, like this expansion, but you work in these countries, already, and so you've had to learn along the way. Was that a huge learning curve?
Yes. And you take your missteps sometimes, depending on, because you rely on local providers as you're moving into these new countries. As you're building your platform, you're relying on local providers, local SMEs, subject matter experts, to understand what are the needs. And sometimes you don't get the best advice. We've really enjoyed the growth that we've had internationally. And as a public software company, you don't find success unless you're growing internationally and globally. A lot of software companies have probably 30-ish% of their total revenue coming from Europe, for instance. And we're well below that at this point. And so we know that that is an area of extreme growth for us. Like we have a lot of opportunity there. And the same in the other geographies. And so I think that while it's daunting to learn and understand how do we sell into this new country, we do rely on local people. So we're hiring local staff that know local customs, but it does get really involved because it's not the same. If you're selling into Iowa or Nebraska, it's generally the same, right? You have to be careful about which team you're supporting, but in general, the same thing. But if you're selling into Spain versus Italy, that is very different. And so you really do have to understand local customs and practices, and it's been really important for us to have those people on the ground that can help us with those markets and with that growth.
So what's been a professional win for you in the last week or two?
Oh, last week or two? Gosh.
Yeah. I'm taking out the Davos trip for you.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're pretty heads down right now because we're working through our Q1 close. I'm in the finance team, right? And so my team has done a great job over the past couple of weeks ensuring that we're closing out Q1 so that we can move towards, we report earnings at the end of the month. So for me, I get very cyclical around earnings and that sort of thing. So we're focused on that. But we did have some great in-person meetings here in Ames, an all-hands meeting more recently. So that's always fun to see people and have them come into town.
All right, Jill. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Workiva and your journey. So Jill Klindt, Chief Financial Officer of Workiva, headquartered here in Ames. For those listening, if you like this podcast, be sure that you subscribe and certainly share it out as well. This is the Area Podcast from the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. Personal stories, professional journeys.
Thanks, Eric.